Right now, let's get some more perspective on this incredible life. A life full of highs and lows, triumph and tragedies. Reporter Michael Marillier is joining us now at the newsroom. It's a studio touchscreen, rather. Michael, good morning. I mean, Mama Winnie, like most people, like most leaders, had a full life, a life that had its ups and downs.
Certainly did, Dan, and what's fascinating to track really is the attention that the apartheid government and the apartheid police put on Mama Winnie as it was focusing on her husband. It seems they identified her as a major threat throughout her time in the fight against apartheid. I want to go back really to the beginning of her life, 1953, Dan. She's admitted to a school in Johannesburg, a school which teaches social workers. She wanted to make a difference in her community. She came to Johannesburg to do exactly that as a young woman. She finishes top of her class, Dan, and she is offered a scholarship to the United States in 1955. She faced an interesting decision, Dan, to stay on in South Africa and fight against apartheid, or to go to the US. Eventually, she decided to focus on her own community and try to make a difference in Johannesburg, an important decision which would shape her life for years to come. She would marry Nelson Mandela on the 14th of June, 1958, another crucial turn in her life. In 1958, Dan, an act of defiance against the apartheid government, the Women's March in Johannesburg. This was 2 years after that famous march to Pretoria in 1956. Winnie Mandela would spend 2 weeks incarcerated, the first of many periods behind bars. Then some turmoil within the family. The 5th of August, Nelson Mandela was arrested just outside Howick in KwaZulu-Natal. Another difficult time for the Mandelas, and Winnie would face her first banning order in December 1962. These banning orders would span vast amounts of time, often as long as 5 years, limiting her movements and limiting where exactly she could go. Nelson Mandela, of course, was sentenced in June 1964, eventually sent to Robben Island, and he would spend 27 years in prison. His wife, of course, would also spend time behind bars, as we mentioned, more than a year in solitary confinement after a police raid, Dan, in May 1969. She recounts that raid vividly in several books on her life. She would undergo trial December 1969, but again, she was never convicted despite spending so much time behind bars in solitary confinement. Another 5 months behind bars, Dan, in the wake of the Soweto uprising in 1976. And then she was banished to Brandfort, the apartheid police collecting her up one evening and taking her to a small town in the Free State, effectively putting her in exile. She would spend 8 years in that particular town. And then the key moment, Dan, and this is probably one of the most memorable images of Winnie Madikizela Mandela. The 11th of February 1990, Nelson Mandela is released, and this image really sums it up. In her own right, a struggle icon, and of course, walking free with her husband at the time. Winnie Madikizela Mandela, remembered and cherished by many South Africans.
Thank you.